All right, so, everyone's talking about it, right? Like, what is the deal with social media and relationships these days? Is it helping? Hurting? Making things more complicated than they need to be? Today, we're doing a deep dive into love in the digital age. All those lovey-dovey and sometimes not so lovey-dovey posts, the endless scrolling, the pressure to present the perfect online persona as a couple.
Yeah, and it's really remarkable when you think about it. I mean, social media has, in a very short period of time, totally reshaped the way couples interact, how they communicate. It's really unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
Nothing else in history has impacted relationship dynamics at this speed.
It's true. It's like we don't even have a roadmap for this. And that's
Mhm.
actually one of the things I found so interesting about the research we're looking at today. It really gets into how social media can be this weird kind of double-edged sword when it comes to love.
Totally, yeah. It can be great for staying connected, especially in today's world, right?
Like,
But at the same time, it brings a whole new set of, well, I guess you could say challenges to the table.
okay, so let's unpack that a little. I mean, on one hand, you've got the ability to stay in touch with your partner no matter the distance, share experiences, which can be really important when life gets busy and you're not always in the same place at the same time.
But then you've got things like, and this was highlighted in several of the studies, you've got this increased likelihood of miscommunication. One study we looked at actually found that couples who rely heavily on digital communication are something like 30% more likely to misinterpret tone, which, as you can imagine, often leads to more arguments and misunderstandings.
Oh, I can totally see that. Trying to have a nuanced conversation over text message is not tricky, to say the least. It's
Yeah,
like, how much can you really convey with an emoji, you know?
exactly.
And then on top of all that, there's this whole pressure to present this image of a perfect relationship online. Have you ever felt that? Like you're constantly comparing your relationship to those picture perfect couples on Instagram. It's incredibly common. And this is where I think social media can really start to impact mental health and well-being within a relationship. That constant comparison, the pressure to portray a certain image can create a lot of insecurity and envy.
It's so true. So how do we navigate this, right? Because it's not like we can or necessarily should just ditch social media entirely.
Hmm.
So many people meet online now or use it to stay connected with long-distance partners. There are definitely positives there, right?
Yeah.
So how do we use social media for good without falling into these traps? What does that look like?
Well, a lot of it comes down to setting boundaries and having those, maybe sometimes uncomfortable, but really important conversations. What are you comfortable sharing online as a couple? How much social media use is too much, especially when you're actually spending time together? Because that's another thing the research highlighted.
Yeah, like nothing kills the mood, like trying to have a conversation with someone while they're scrolling through their phone. Right. It's true. It creates this sense of distance even when you're physically present. One of the sources actually used the phrase alone together, which I thought was super insightful.
It is. It really captures that feeling. Okay, so boundaries are big. Open communication is key.
Hmm.
Anything else couples should keep in mind?
Don't be afraid to talk about those feelings of jealousy or insecurity that might come up related to social media. Because we all feel them, right? It's just about acknowledging them and figuring out how to work through them together.
Oh, 100%. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others online. It can turn even the most rational person into like an amateur detective over analyzing every like and comment.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about the now, but social media is not going anywhere. And in fact, it's just getting, well, more complicated. We've got new platforms popping up all the time, virtual reality becoming more mainstream. Any thoughts on how all of this might shape the future of love and relationships? I mean, what happens when our virtual lives start to blend even more with our real lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources we looked at definitely touched on this idea that the lines are becoming increasingly blurred. I mean, we're already seeing the rise of virtual relationships, right? And dating apps have become the main way people meet and form romantic connections.
It's mind blowing, really.
It
It
is.
makes you wonder, in a world where we're increasingly connected online, how do we make sure those real life, genuine connections remain at the heart of our relationships? It's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for all of us to maybe put down our phones for a bit and have some of those important conversations with our partners, right? Because ultimately, love in the digital age is still about love.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.